Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Frank McNeil with my regular show, Talk of the Town, and I'm pleased to have with me this evening Dr. Kamal Kamayo, who is a retiring professor from the University of Springfield in Illinois, and he has just been named the interim executive director of the Springfield African American History Museum. Dr. Kamal, good afternoon, and how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a Friday afternoon. TGIF, brother.
Well, we might get together and go do a frosty after this, but
Okay.
what could I say? Anyway, Doctor, I am pleased to have you on the show, and one of the things we want to get started with is just give us a little background of who you are and where you're from.
Okay. Well, I've lived all over the states. I was born in Chicago. From there, sister born in Carbondale, brothers born in East St. Louis, another one born in Danville, and then we moved to Champaign. So I've been all over Illinois, but that was before I was 12. Then I moved to St. Louis. Or my family moved to St. Louis. I was there until I graduated.
Okay, so you graduated from high school in St. Louis.
Yes, University City High. Got my
Oh, okay.
50th union coming up in about 5 months.
Okay, so you an educated man, as we would say. Graduated from University High, and then you went from University High to Stanford.
Yeah, from U City, I went to Stanford. Did my undergraduate there. African American Studies. African American Studies was one major, and the other major was psychology. A couple years after
Okay.
that, I went and got my master's at UCLA in African American Studies.
Wow.
You want the rest of the academic pedigree?
Yes, I think we need the rest of the academic history here.
Okay, well, I taught at UC Santa Cruz after that for 6 years and then left Santa Cruz, went back to St. Louis and got my PhD at St. Louis University in American Studies.
That's interesting. You got American Studies, and we have all of this discussion about history these days,
Hmm.
and about specifically African American history and the relevancy, and you got a PhD in American Studies,
Right. I did not have
and but
American history in my American Studies curriculum, but I had it all throughout my undergraduate and my master's degree. So while I'm not a historian, I'm very familiar with African American history. Why I took the American Studies PhD was because all the people who we had talked about in African American studies, the targets of African American studies, I hadn't read them. So I was able to read them, the Thomas Jeffersons, the Alexis de Tocquevilles, and all of those as a part of my PhD study. But my dissertation is Afrocentric.
okay, and well, now you have come upon the African American History Museum, Springfield's African American History Museum, and how do you feel you can enhance the value of the Springfield African American History Museum?
Well, me individually, I think my background as a professor, uh, 40-year educator, been a professional in the field of doing presentations, and I've been around the world traveling, done a lot of things with the university. I think that those are transferable skills that will help me to run the museum, that will help me to make contacts that I can use in the museum, that will help me to uh, to have ideas about what we need to do.
And that's one of the things I really want to talk about is that your influx or your impact on the Springfield African American History Museum, and how do you think your impact will make this a better museum, and while we are on the list of sites to see when you come to Springfield outside of the Lincoln, and the good thing is we're right here at the Lincoln's Tomb, so that people passing the Lincoln Tombs can just take a detour right into the African American History Museum. How can we make this a better, enjoyable, more informative uh, visit for people coming from outside of Springfield? That they will go back and say, you need to really stop at the African American History Museum in Springfield because that's really a great place to go visit.
Well, we're working on that. There are a lot of things that I've tried to do already. Getting patrons here is one of the primary goals. And in some ways, in this world now, it starts with the website. So I have instituted things like on this day in African American history. Uh, I've instituted other programs that are able to be seen on our website. We've got a book club meeting. We're going to explore the 1619 project, the first chapter tomorrow, and each month we'll explore subsequent chapters. Want to have a reading room for the children where we deal with reading African American history books, Black children's books. So those are the kind of things that can hopefully bring some people into the museum. Now, what they get when they get here, we only have one monitor right now, but trying to get dedicated monitors to African American uh, streaming, audio visual things. So we have things on the Free Frank McWhorter. We've done things on the Red Tails, done things on, well, it's just finished with Jazz Appreciation Month. So we had quite a few videos showing on jazz music. So when people come in, they will see African American culture, not African American history as such. I don't really draw a separation too much too. So the main thing they'll find out is about the Springfield race rides. What we do is provide a service, provide a level of knowledge that they don't get in too many other places. They're,
And that raises a question or raises a comment or question or however you want to take it. How do you think this? How do you think the Springfield African American Museum? How you think you should interact with District 186 as far as a resource, as far as a learning tool? There's a lot of information, a lot of history there that Americans, whether they're black or white, should know about Springfield and the history of African Americans in Springfield and just African Americans in general. Do you think, as a educator for many years, that the history that you can share there is good for not just black kids but all kids?
one of my mottos, and I'm distressed that I've been interviewed for four different times on television stations, and I always try and stress African American history is American history.
Yeah,
And
true,
they
true.
that. So what I can do, it's not just interacting with 186. We get school buses and things come in all the time. We interact with District 186 at the high school level where we have an annual history bowl. We invite, I don't know if you can catch this on the camera.
I see. Yes, we
Okay, so
have a visual.
artwork from District 186 students. And we have something like this from different schools, from different age groups every year.
You're
Now,
moving. You're moving a little bit fast. If you
okay,
slow down just a little bit, and we can get a better. I can get a better view of it. Okay, yeah, that's much better.
okay. So these are ways we interact with the school district that we get students' art. But see, it's not just about getting the students' art. The parents, the siblings, the kinfolk, and all friends are going to come in to see the art. And then when they come in to see the art, they're also going to experience the museum. So once we get them here, they're going to, excuse me, they're going to get the whole experience or have access to the whole experience. But the better point is how do we provide curricular support to the district? I have a number of resources that I've offered to the district over the 20 years I've been here in Springfield. Most of the time, they don't take advantage of that. But it's still there. This is a resource to them that we can get them to come in. I'm trying to strengthen those ties to the district to get them to have this as you say, one of the destinations. Come here now. It's not going to take the place of a course, but it will give them a number of different experiences and exposures to African American history, like I said, that they won't get anywhere else.
Let me ask a question. As you
That
know,
addressed the well enough to you because there are a lot of things that we can do with the school district other than just being here and having them come here. We're working on a series of traveling exhibits. We've had some of them in the school district already. We have a traveling exhibits on black stamps. We hope to get some other ones on local politicians, on local musicians, on various other events other than just the Springfield race rides. And we have a traveling exhibit for that.
okay, now with all the controversy with the number of pieces of legislation around the country, Illinois just happens to be in a good space at this point in time that hasn't had all the controversial legislation that where parents are saying that teaching African American history is not a good thing, and Florida and the other states around the country who are limiting the amount of African American history that can be shared. Do you think this will be a impetus for people to say, "Hey, we don't want our kids to engage in this kind of history, in this kind of learning"?
I hope not. I'm not
Well,
in a position to say we have a very, it's kind of a conservative environment. You know,
right.
20 years in California, and they haven't gone that route. Texas has gone that route. There are a number of other states who have gone that route. I'd like to think that anybody who's a serious educator, and I'm up on the vernacular, the educators, the higher education people in it, know all these things and aren't frightened by it. They understand that it's a legitimate part of American history. It motivates and inspires them. It's the politicians who are trying to control what goes on with education. And they have a not so hidden agenda to undo a lot of what was done with the civil rights movement.
That's boy, you got me on the segue I was trying to get to, trying to be methodical about it, but that's the whole issue that I think is relevant today is that the political agenda has entered the educational agenda, if I can say it that way, and this is not about learning. This is about restricting learning, if I can say it that way, that certain politicians don't want the certain children, or more, most likely white children, if I can say it that way, to be knowledgeable about Black people. And to me, that only fosters more, what should I say, divisiveness when they don't understand or don't know anything about the kids they're going to school with, and they're not trying to learn anything about them.
You know, I agree mostly with what you say, but I have to say it's not just the white kids that they don't want educated. I think it's the black kids that they don't want educated too. We,
Well, that if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah. So they don't want anybody to know that, and I think they're misguided. They can't see too much further than beyond their nose. The history is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to learn from. It's something.
Well,
There are mistakes and errors in just about everybody's history. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Going to respond to it, and how are you going to keep from making some of those same mistakes? Yes, it's divisiveness, but they don't want a critically aware and a critically thinking populace. They want the populace to be cows. They want them to be easily herded into wherever it is they want them to go. They don't want to get the questions.
Don't have an original thought or don't think for yourself. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's the bottom line. That any level of liberal arts education, not just including Black history. I mean, they've taken art, they've taken music out of a lot of the curriculum. The kinds of things that encourage people to expand their mind rather than narrow their perspectives. Those are the things they don't want in the curriculum. African American studies, because it does hit, or African American history, because it does hit on some very sore points the uh, in the national narrative. They absorb that and they want to say, okay, well, that's not us. We're not that. We're not
Well,
necessarily saying that. We're saying that this is what has happened, and what they're doing is acting like they're that. If
well, let me get to one of those things that has been thrown around over and over again, and I listened to it, and I've seen debates about it. And this is the critical race theory, and it's not taught to elementary school children. It's not taught to junior high school children. It's not taught to high school children. It's not even taught most of the times in colleges, but it's a post college course developed by some people, African Americans per se. And can you expound a little bit why critical race theory? What is the big issue that critical race theory, quote, supposedly teaches white kids to hate themselves? I just have, I've gone looked up critical race theory, seen what it teaches, and nothing to the sort. But maybe you, as an educator, can tell me a little bit better.
well, let me ask you a question. Initials be say,
What was that again?
can I go beyond using the initials BS?
CIT?
Because, I mean, it's bullshit, man. That's
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yes,
all a cow pie.
that's the good thing about podcasts. You can sort of be a little bit more liberal in speech about it, and so
But
yes,
but see, this is the thing. This is what they're saying, but that's not what critical race theory does. It's when they present these alternative facts and they say it loud enough, they say it often enough, they say it in the right and the powerful medias, and they get people to believing that that's what it does. Now, critical race theory in analyzing race and analyzing any of the isms, because then once you get into critical race theory, you start talking about intersectionality. And you start talking about how oppression has functioned in this country, how it has functioned globally. So once you start doing that, you question the way people who have a lot of money are continuing to make money and what they're doing to continue to take money from people who don't have the money to be taken from. So it really is about maintaining people in a subjugated class. And that's what happens when you're dealing with the blacks. And it's not really about white folks hating what they've done or hating themselves. It might be more as it was when we grew up in the 60s and 70s, that a lot of times they were hating what their ancestors had done. And I would also add, perhaps incorrectly hating what they thought that they had done. Most of the white people in this country, if you look at it, were immigrants that came in after the era of enslavement.
true,
So, and then most of those before that did not own slaves.
right.
So
Well, let me sort of context this. Uh, pre Before slavery ended, the workforce was predominantly African American slaves. Post slavery, when they had the influx of immigrants from around the world coming to the United States, was because they didn't have the free workforce anymore. So they imported people from all over the world and brought them in, and they began to doing the grunt work, and they resented slaves and freedmen at this time because they were now competition.
right, but see, I would question kind of the narrowness of that perspective because
Well,
we weren't
I didn't want to be expansive, but
we weren't that large a part of the population in but 3 or 4 states to be the bulk of the labor force and even the bulk of the grunt labor force. So we were competition in some ways in some states like Mississippi or South Carolina.
Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina,
But South Carolina and Mississippi had the largest percentage of African Americans who were in,
right,
and we were a part of the workforce and a major part of the workforce. But even still, the rest of the white folks didn't have silver spoons in their mouth. They had to work for a living too. Some of them were in the mercantile sorts of fields, but many of them were out in the other kinds of fields too. So they were manual laborers. And when you read stories of, like Frederick Douglass in Maryland, the dock workers, many of them were white in the 1820s, 1830s when he was growing up and writing about. So that slight misrepresentation of history and saying that we were the only ones doing the work was all that we were doing for the most part, the 90% of us who were unfree and
right.
the 10% of us who were under free, 90% were doing,
Under, that's a
uh,
new term, under free.
yeah,
I mean, you were free,
us were
but you
doing,
weren't 100% free.
yeah. So no, free was never quite free. Sometimes we were free from, sometimes we were free to, but we were very rarely both, and very rarely our own agents because of the oppressive nature of the society. And yes, but the period of the competition was a period of growth for the country. When we look at the Industrial Revolution, when we look at what happened
Right.
in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and you go around the urban areas and you see all the skyscrapers, and when you look and see how society expanded then, that was the work that the white laborers were brought in to do and were wanting to do. And it wasn't necessarily bringing them in to work the cotton fields, which still needed to be worked.
Well, you had sharecropping.
Yeah, they had sharecropping, but along with sharecropping, there was the prison work programs, the work gangs and things that also
Right.
a lot of that work.
Now, let me sort of scale the conversation back to the Springfield African American History Museum.
Right.
Being that we've had this really, really great conversation tonight, uh, is there a possibility that you can prepare and do some lectures at the museum where I can have you on here and have you post up that you're going to be doing a lecture on a certain topic so that we can maybe engage people from the community and get them in to have these discussions, because I think it's really, really important that
Yes,
we can talk about it among ourselves, but we need to talk about this with other people who have a different understanding of who we are and what we do and how we got to where we are. And to me, it's about breaking down some barriers and some misconceptions that some people have about what happened during the course of time.
the yes we can, and I'd be happy to talk about any subject that I am capable of talking about with you on a podcast. But part of the issue in education, and especially in African American studies or these kinds of fields, there's so much miseducation out there that the students have to go through unlearning. And I'm talking students who will get 60 contact hours with an instructor, plus all the other hours that they spend reading and dealing with writing papers and doing research, things like that. That's hard to replicate in me just speaking at you or
Right,
any.
right. But
So,
it
but
it
the
can, to
another
me,
is, just let me put this out there, that one of the things I'm doing is having a monthly book club around the book 1619. Not
right.
a book in a month, but one chapter in a month. So if people come in having read that one chapter, and they don't have to read it to come, but that can be a baseline for a text to say, this is the one area that we're going to focus this discussion on. And people can come in with some background knowledge, whatever they had before, plus have this groundbreaking book, one chapter, approximately 30 pages or so, that they can then begin as an access point to African American history.
Well, that I'm glad you brought up 1619, and I meant to reference this earlier. That has been probably one document uh, that to me has just created such a firestorm because an accurate display of history was produced, and it is one of the most well researched uh, books I've read. It documents down to the. I mean, Ms. Jones did an extremely good job, and
Well,
it's
but see,
to some people it's frightening to read what she has produced.
yeah, she produced it, but she has some of the top scholars in the field writing chapters for her in that.
Yes.
So as an editor, she's done a hell of a job. As a historian, she's done a hell of a job overseeing and creating this uh, massive document that isn't as fat as the content that's in it. So when you look at the book, you say, well, that's a fat book according to most books. But when
Right.
you read it, and the intensity and the depth of the various essays that she has in there is wonderful. Yes,
Then we're gonna wind down because I know you got places to go and things to do. But I got one last question. We're gonna get. Why has there been such a pushback about 1619?
fear.
Fear?
Let me go back to I don't listen to a whole lot of rap music, but if you remember Fear of a Black Planet,
Yeah.
yeah. It's it's a fear that we will take over by telling the truth. And that's what it is. The truth is a very hard pill for somebody to bear. And what they have the potential to lose is power. They have the potential to lose economic power. They have the potential to lose political power if the truth gets out. If people understand the lies that have been told, and if they're able to critically think for themselves, they'll be able to look at the BS that's going on now and call it what it is.
Right.
That's the thing that they're most afraid of.
Boy. All right. Well, I'm going to get ready to let you go out for the evening, and we're going to close down the show. But Dr. Kamal, I really appreciate the time that you
Well,
spent.
invite me back now because this
You're going to get to come back, and we're going to have some more conversations, and I will be in touch with you so that we can, and I may even schedule what the discussion may be, and maybe we can get some interaction. We're out on Facebook, and I think we're on YouTube and Facebook, so that maybe when I get some of the comments from YouTube and Facebook about how they receive this show, it'll give me some guidance as to what we should talk about next.
sounds great.
All right, Doctor, it's good having you on and looking forward to you to be back on Talk of the Town.
I'll be looking to be with
Thank you very much, sir.